We begin this news hour in Sudan, where the Prime Minister, Abdalla Hamdok, has announced his resignation, throwing the country deeper into political uncertainty. He was arrested in October after a military takeover, but then reinstated when he signed an agreement with General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan. But Mr. Hamdok has failed to form a government since, and his decision to share power with the military led to thousands taking to the streets to protest against the deal. On Sunday, the military responded to these protests with force, leaving 2 demonstrators dead. Mr. Hamdok said Sudan risks sliding into disaster without a new roundtable process to review its transition, or to rather to revive its transition to democracy.
During the past few days, I met with all the components of the transitional period, the political and military components, and the peace partners, to explain and brief them and to put the national and historical responsibility before them. The honorable people, and based on all what I have mentioned, I have decided to return your trust to you and announce to you my resignation from the position of Prime Minister to make way for another one of the sons of this generous country to complete the leadership of the dear homeland and pass through it during the remaining life of the transition towards the reviving civil, democratic state. I tried as much as I could to avoid our country slipping into a catastrophe, and now our country is going through a dangerous turning point that may threaten its entire survival if it is not remedied soon. The major crisis today in the homeland is primarily a political crisis, but it is gradually changing to include all aspects of economic and social life and is on its way to becoming a comprehensive crisis.
Well, for more on the crisis in Sudan, let's bring in the African affairs analyst and publisher of Africa Briefing, Jon Offei-Ansah. Good to see you, John. Happy New Year to you. So the Sudanese civilian Prime Minister, Abdalla Hamdok, has now resigned. Conventional wisdom suggests that he appears to have realized that he was just legitimizing the coup. Is that what the feeling is in Sudan and amongst analysts like yourself?
His resignation has actually dealt a devastating body blow to Sudan's transition process, the transition to full democratic rule. Actually, he made the threat to resign a few weeks, somewhere in mid-December. And I believe that it was because of the increasing protest by the civilian population against the military's participation in the transitional process. And also, the number of fatalities, increasing fatalities, meted out by the security agencies on the protesting civilians. So it was on the cards, that he was going to resign. But still, it comes as a bit of a shock, and it deals a heavy body blow to Sudan's transition process.
Well, absolutely. Clearly, the political agreement upon which his reinstatement was predicated didn't deliver on its promises. I mean, we saw that from the reaction, as you mentioned, of the people on the streets. Why did he go back to the job in spite of all that opposition?
Well, the sound is bad, but look, after the coup of October 25th, when he was put under house arrest for nearly 2 weeks, he came back and said that he had renegotiated a 14-point deal, right, including protection for civilian protesters and so on and so forth. But his reinstatement as prime minister was seen as a betrayal, on his part, by the civilian protesters, who are hell-bent on seeing a complete disengagement by the military from Sudan politics. So the whole thing was, the resignation, I also believe, was precipitated by the dozens of people who have been killed by the security agencies.
And Jon, how difficult does his resignation make things for the military? Because, I mean, there is no way for the generals to now pretend that this is a partnership any longer. I mean, it's very clearly now a continuation of the coup, isn't it?
Yes, the military appears, not willing to leave the political sphere in Sudan. I believe they want to have a say, in every step of the way towards the restoration of full democracy in the country. And this is what the people, the ordinary guy, ordinary woman, ordinary person in Sudan is against. So with this, with the Hamdok out of the way, it appears the military, are going to stay in power, and they may appoint somebody who they will consider as malleable to their wishes or to their machinations, if you like.
So, I mean, we heard, Jon, the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken saying the US is prepared to respond. Washington, of course, heavily involved in trying to keep this move towards democracy alive. I mean, what hope is there now?
Personally, I don't see much hope. I foresee chaos in the in the months ahead, because, like I said earlier on, the military are not ready to leave the scene. And the Sudanese people are digging their heels in. Their resolve, keeps hardening by the day. They want the military out of Sudanese politics. So what I see is chaos in the months and maybe years ahead, until maybe some allies, some strong allies of Sudan and of the Sudanese military maybe brings pressure to bear upon them to leave the scene and pave the way for a peaceful transition to full civilian rule.
Now, you mention chaos and pressure there. What's the regional reaction to Mr. Hamdok stepping down after reprising that role just a few short weeks ago?
Well, the regional reaction has been muted, as far as I know. We haven't heard nor seen any reaction by leaders in the region, and for that matter, even by the African Union. But the major reaction we've had is from the US, who is trying to make sure that the transition process runs smoothly.
Jon, I want to thank you exceedingly for your analysis there. Jon Offei-Ansah is the African Affairs analyst and publisher of Africa Briefing, talking to me about the latest developments out of Sudan.